Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned because it's time for my weekly reading report. That fantastic program where I talk about all the stuff that I read the previous week. It'll have to be a quick one, Roger. I don't have a ton of time today, but have to get the reading report in. What the hell did I read last week anyway? Well, last week was as busy as it's been for weeks, so not as much as I'd like, but I did read some stuff. Let me break out my list for the 500 book challenge, the challenge where I have to read 500 books that I own before I'll buy any new ones. So, the last time I talked to you on this program, we were discussing book number 275, which I had started, which is Weasels Ripped My Flesh. Yes, Weasels Ripped My Flesh. Okay, so I finished this fantastic book, and it's magnificent. It's one of the best books that I've read this year, from a point of pure fun. Anyway, it's awesome. So this is an anthology of stories that were printed in the old men's magazines, the men's adventure magazines, I should say, which were published from the 50s into the 1970s. Just wonderful stuff. Of course, there is the Weasels Ripped My Flesh title story, which was great. I think even better, though, let me pull it out. Even better than that story was Chewed to Bits by Giant Turtles. Chewed to Bits by Giant Turtles was my favorite little animals eating people stories that's in this book. It was great. So, men were in great danger of being bitten to death by small creatures back in the 50s through the 1970s. I don't know how we got over that, but apparently this is a danger which has since mostly passed. But it was a real problem back in the old days, apparently. Chewed to Bits by Giant Turtles, great stuff. But this book has other things that I thought were pretty great. Robert Silverberg had a story called Mattern's 50 Days as an Amazon Love Slave. That was pretty good. So Robert Silverberg, he wrote a lot of stories, apparently, for the men's adventure magazines, which explains some of the perviness of some of his later books. He wrote a lot of stories, including this great one, Mattern's 50 Days as an Amazon Love Slave. It wasn't all it was cracked up to be, as it turns out. He had a tough time. Poor Mattern did. Poor fella. And so that was a good one. There were a lot of good ones, including another I Was a Slave story. I was a slave of the Savage Blonde. He was a slave of the Savage Blonde. This was, I think, the longest story in this volume. It's epic. It's an epic written by E.C. Schirmacher. Whether that was a real name or not, I don't know. But yeah, this is an epic story. It's great. It's full of good stuff in this book. There's a story in here about a young female reporter who goes to a lesbian party, which is absolutely hilarious in a kind of reefer madness sort of way. So there's a lot of that kind of thing in here, but there's also some excellent adventure, as you would expect, war stories in here, which were really good. Highly recommend this. This highlights kind of a forgotten period of literature, for sure. It's great. So yeah, Weasels Ripped My Flesh from the Men's Adventure Library. They've published quite a number of books which reprint stories from the old men's adventure magazines, stories and artwork and that sort of thing. So check them out. Excellent book, Weasels Rip My Flesh. Fantastic. So I read that. And so now it's time to turn the page, another 25 books down. So book number 276 that I finished was an excellent book. It was The Shadow, Hands in the Dark. So The first interesting thing about this is that the cover does not belong to this book. This cover by Steranko. Steranko did all the covers for this series of shadow novels that was originally published by Pyramid Books. Steranko did all the covers, but except one that I can think of. Mobsman on the Spot. I don't think he didn't do the cover for that one. But this one, Hands in the Dark, has a cover that was intended for another book. It should have been that cover should have been on this one. I think I'll put that cover on the thumbnail. I'll put the correct cover on the thumbnail so you can see it. But this is to another book, but it doesn't matter because it's a fantastic cover. And the book was pretty darn good. It was another book where the Shadow fights gangsters and criminals, but it's a little bit different. It's a little bit smaller scale. Feels more like a mystery, like more of a classic mystery, even though you know who done it. There are some vicious, vicious criminals in here. Like the murderers in this book are just the worst. And we have a young man who has been called back to the States from Africa where he had been living because his uncle has passed away, murdered, as it turns out. And he is kidnapped and replaced by another young man who impersonates him, because even though his uncle didn't seem to have any money, there is a hidden treasure somewhere. And the Shadow has to take care of business. Of course, there's a beautiful young woman in this book who's hardly in it, but she is there just to be menaced for a short time before she is saved by the Shadow. She's rescued by the Shadow. The Shadow is actually in this book quite a bit. But still, you know, he's his same mysterious self. We don't really know anything about the Shadow, except that he, you know, fights crime and has an organization of agents. And we do see some of those agents, although none of the agents play a huge part in the book, although they are present. It's a good one. It's a good one. We spend most of our time in this book with the evil criminals. And they're just so fiendish, greedy, and vicious that, you know, it's a good time. And it's fun to see the Shadow bust them up. And so, yeah, this is a good Shadow novel, Hands in the Dark, by Walter Gibson under the pen name of Maxwell Grant. I have another Shadow book that I intend to read this month because I didn't read one last month, but this month's pretty packed, so we'll see how much I get to. Particularly since the next book I'm going to be reading, I didn't plan on reading at all this month, but I saw it on the shelf and I said, you know, I want to read that book because I didn't get to it. And so the next book I'm going to be reading that I'll start today is The Tomorrow People by Judith Merril, which I intended to read in Rocket Summer, but I just didn't get to it. So now I'm going to get to it because there was something on Mars that killed people. There was something on Mars that killed people, and I want to find out what that something is, because he came back from Mars with a secret too terrible to remember. So damn it, I gotta find out what that is, right, Roger? What is this secret? Judith Merril, she was a science fiction writer. She also edited anthologies. She wrote short stories. And so she also wrote The Tomorrow People, which I intended to read, like I said, in Rocket Summer, but didn't get to it. So I'm just going to go ahead and get to it now. It's not really appropriate for Garb August, but, you know, I'm going to read it anyway. And then I'll probably follow this with The Moon Men from Edgar Rice Burroughs. Anything Edgar Rice Burroughs is probably technically appropriate for Garb August, since he has been underrated forever. And many of his books, fantastic though they may be, have been considered trash by society. But I love Edgar Rice Burroughs. So yeah, I'll probably follow that one up with The Moon Men, which is the next Edgar Rice Burroughs book I have to read. But I've also been reading some other stuff, including the Fantastic Four. So I am reading all of the Fantastic Four from the first run of the Fantastic Four, which ran from 1961 until 1996, when it was canceled and brought right back. There is a new Fantastic Four movie, which I heard was good, And now I'm hearing it was just okay. I've heard different things about the new Fantastic Four movie, but I haven't had a chance to go see it myself. Just haven't had the opportunity. I guess I could go see it today, but I won't because I have too many other things to do. So yeah, Fantastic Four. This is from the 1980s. This epic collection has stories from 88 to 89, and this is the period when Steve Englehart was writing the book, and his Fantastic Four was terrible, as I've been complaining about the last few weeks, which is why I haven't finished this yet. I'm kind of lagging on this because it's not great. At this point, after he has changed up the team and made the thing a super weird looking thing and brought in a female thing, and actually, right now, the Fantastic Four is actually the Fantastic Five because Englehart couldn't count. In the last issue that I read, the Fantastic Four has been replaced by an evil Fantastic Four. Englehart at this point is signing his name John Harkness on the book because he's pissed off at Marvel for making him bring back Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman after he kicked him off the book. And so now he's made the Fantastic Four evil in revenge. And so we've got an evil, kind of lame Fantastic Four. And the Thing says bah every other panel. And he's kind of lampooning, in a way, some of the older Fantastic Four issues. Because, you know, his Fantastic Four was just so much better, right? So he's doing that while the real Fantastic Four is in suspended animation. They've been put in suspended animation by an evil Watcher. You know, there's the Watcher that lives on the moon and just watches stuff. Well, there's an evil Watcher in this one. And the next book I have to read has Doctor Doom in it. And this is issue 330, which is the next one I have to read. There's the evil Watcher with his big head. So, yeah, I'm slowly going through these issues. I'll probably read a few of them today just to catch up and to, you know, suffer. But yeah, I've been reading this. I hear it gets better after John Harkness leaves the book, so we'll see. I'm looking forward to that. And at the end of this book, actually, we get something really cool. We get the Doctor Strange, Doctor Doom graphic novel, which I guess they put in here because Doctor Doom's in it, and he's a Fantastic Four character. So even though the Fantastic Four don't take a part in this story, hey, I'll take it. Anything to make this epic collection better. And also, I'm reading Superman every day. I am reading Superman every day. And I'm reading from the Golden Age Superman Omnibus Volume 3. I'm a little over halfway through it. And it's been great. And the next book I have, or the next comic I have to read is Superman issue number 20. And so this is during the war, World War II. So there are a lot of war covers on it, on these issues. Probably the most interesting issue I've read since the last time we talked about this stuff. Let me see if I could find it. Here it is. So there was a Superman cartoon. You've probably seen it. You could find it on YouTube. There's a Superman cartoon that was out at the time. And in this issue, there is an adaptation of one of the cartoons. But to make it more interesting, Clark Kent and Lois Lane go to the movies and watch a Superman cartoon. And Clark Kent keeps having to distract Lois Lane because there are scenes in the cartoon, and, you know, like I said, they adapt the cartoon, but they also show Lois Lane and Clark Kent watching it. And every time in the cartoon that Clark Kent shows up in the cartoon, Clark in the theater has to distract Lois so she doesn't find out that he's Superman. This comic book story makes perfect sense. So everybody in the theater knows Clark's secret identity, but Lois walks out not knowing it. This is the kind of thing that if it happened in the Silver Age of comics would be an imaginary story. But this happens in the golden age of comics where literally anything could happen and it doesn't matter. So it was interesting. So this has been fun though. This has been tremendous fun. I've never read most of these stories in this volume, so I've been having a really good time with it. I keep intending to get back to Tomb of Dracula and haven't, so I might do that today if I have a spare moment, which, let's be honest, I probably won't because I never do. But that's it. That's everything. That's my reading report. Real quick today, Roger. I'll have something up tomorrow. I'm going to try to get the Robert E. Howard show up tomorrow. Then catch me on Epic Comic Book Wednesday. I will see you then.